Another year has come to an end. That means it's time for me to share my top 10 favorite movies of the year. While not as good as last year, 2024 still had some amazing titles to offer. As always, feel free to leave your own list down below. Before I get into number 10, I do want to list a few honorable mentions that didn't make the list. The Order, A Real Pain, Conclave, The Wild Robot, The First Omen, Smile 2, Alien Romulus, and Civil War. Coming in at my number 10 spot, and oh lord, I'm worried about the hate I might get for this one, but it's going to be Gladiator 2 because I have my own reasons why I do love it more than most people. And one of those reasons is that the first Gladiator is one of my favorite films of all time, and I wasn't going into this movie trying to compare the two of them because it would be crazy if you were expecting the second one to be as good as, the first one or better, as we've seen Ridley Scott's track record right now has been going down lately. So I expected to like Gladiator 2, but I wasn't expecting to love it as much as I did. This proves that Ridley Scott should just stick to action science fiction films because they do work better. You got like Alien, you got some other action films because, films like House of Gucci, Napoleon, kind of like his biopic drama films do not work. I didn't like Napoleon. House of Gucci got terrible reviews. And I swear when I watched Gladiator 2, I leaned in like 10 times during the movie because the action was tough as hell. I went in for an action movie and that is what I got. And I also got a pretty good story along with that, man. The action sequences were just off the charts. The one-on-one sequences were definitely my favorite fights in the whole movie, my favorite action sequences, even though there was like 5 other action sequences here. Lucius, when he fought Acacius in the arena, I was digging that. I was like, damn, because Acacius didn't want to fight him. He knew who he was. He was just trying to survive in that. Lucius was just out for blood because Acacius killed his wife. And then you had at the end, in the end of the movie, you had Lucius standing up and basically his last stand against Macrinus. And Macrinus, played by Denzel Washington, stole the show for me. Pedro Pascal's Acacius were really good too. Two Emperors were great also, but Denzel Washington, he stole the show, man. I was just really impressed by him, like with his little side eye movements that he gave. You were like locked in with them. We all know Denzel is great, but him commanding a movie like Gladiator is kind of really impressive. And as I said, Lucius versus Macrinus was awesome. Macrinus, I was surprised he stood his own there, but he kind of did until Lucius cut his hand off. I was like, damn, Lucius. Paul Mescal, man, what a great actor. This is his first action movie, I would say. He does give some great emotional performances, but I'd love to see him in another action movie after this. He was great. The sets here were great. Costume was great. The CGI actually looked brilliant. And as I said, love the action. One of my favorite movies is the first Gladiator, so it's no surprise I loved Gladiator 2. Number 9 is going to be a complete unknown, and this was probably my most unexpected entry into my top 10, as before watching this, I really only knew a little bit about Bob Dylan, but I didn't really know about his personal story, his story about turning electric. And James Mangold just has a way of telling these biopics that just draws me in really close to them, just like he did with Ford v Ferrari, which is, kind of like a biopic. And I also wouldn't say this is kind of like the normal biopics we get this day, like Elvis, Bohemian Rhapsody. Like those are kind of like spunk, very fancy, flashy editing, all that. A lot of music style kind of essence to those. This one is just focusing on 5 years of Bob Dylan's life, and more is just a very calm, sort of vibed to it movie rather than like a music video fancy movie. And I thought Timothy Chalamet completely disappears into the role of Bob Dylan, with not only his mannerisms, but also his voice sounding very similar. Not like the same, but also very similar. I love the Newport sequences and seeing Bob Dylan, Joan Baez just performing together there. And, Bob Dylan's little freak out sequences that he had because everyone wanted him to just perform Blowing in the Wind for the rest of his life when he wanted to change. And he didn't want to follow those rules. He didn't want to follow them, and he didn't. The musical sequences were great. Every one of them I really did enjoy. I've been bumping that soundtrack. It was also very interesting to explore Dylan's, romance issues that he had with the women, because he had, an affair with some supporting characters here. And Elle Fanning and Monica Barbaro were the female supporting characters. They were both excellent. I love Monica's singing voice. She was terrific. Her and Timothy have just some great duets in this movie and some great, turning points here. But it was just a very unexpected film for me. I really liked the trailer. Thought the trailers were a nice vibe. I thought it was going to be like a 7 out of 10, but it turned out to be a 9 out of 10 for me. It's just a very enjoyable film with which what it's done, it's the style of it I really did like. And I see this one turning into a big comfort movie for me. Number 8 is going to be Longlegs, which basically shook me to my core, and I'm happy I saw it before everyone said it was overhyped and not scary, because I like forming my own opinion, and I think that those people who said that really made me angry because they went in expecting, a big jump scare every second kind of movie. But no, this movie was more about, creating this atmosphere. And I think Oz Perkins did an excellent job at building this atmosphere because it was quite unsettling during the whole movie, which makes me really excited for his next film, which is The Monkey, which is a Stephen King adaptation of a short story. And some of the shot sequences here also freaked me out because there was like extreme wide shots when Micah Monroe's character was driving down a road for like these huge trees on the side, and her car was like the only one. I don't know, that just got me like freaked out. It was like really eerie, like some stuff there, and it taking place kind of in the, I guess it was like in the winter. There's a lot of snow, but the whites there, the dark. I was like really creeped out here. It kind of reminded me of like Zodiac or maybe Seven, as Micah Monroe's character is solving these clues while looking for Nicolas Cage, who is the character here. It just creeped me out the whole time. They really wanted to play with the sound design, which I really did like. A lot of quiet sequences, so you didn't really want to move. You didn't really want to breathe there. And Nicolas Cage was creepy as hell with the way he talks and the way he moves and the way he looks. Man, he looked creepy. Let's just say that he was a true menace to society here. And the scene where his character and Micah Monroe's character, they meet for the first time and she's interrogating him, was one of my favorite scenes of the year. And when he starts begging, he's smacking his head on the table, I started squirming in my seat. I was like, no, 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 man, don't do this. I hate when characters in the movies do that, when they start slamming their face on something. And Talk to Me from last year, that also freaked me out. But him killing himself right there freaked me out too, because you think that he's going to be the villain the whole movie, but nah, he killed himself, and there's still 30 minutes to go in the movie. So I was like, where are we going to go here? But the ending kind of, shocked me about who was actually behind all these killings, and I thought it was super effective, like playing in the essence of evil, kind of Satan taking over these people here. And the ending with having the lead FBI guy kind of like possessed and killing his family was horrifying. And another great thing about this movie was Oz actually put a lot of different hidden shadows of devils in this, which was a nice touch, because on physical media I've been looking for them, finding some of them, and he says there's a lot of them. I don't think I've found all of them, but it is a really nice game to find all these. It's a really nice one to rewatch too, because it's just put this on late at night, you get really creeped out, then you can't fall asleep, but it is a very effective horror movie. Number 7 is going to be Sing Sing, and it's probably the film that moved me the most this year because I teared up a couple times here. This is actually based on the true story, and it actually had the people that played themselves here who were actually in the RTA program, was another thing that made it really emotional. I'm not going to get into too many specific scenes because a lot of people haven't seen it, but it's also, as I said, emotional, but it's also uplifting, as they got these, real people got to share their stories inside this movie. Most of them showed up in this one sequence, which was an audition sequence, terrific sequence, but a lot of them also played their role throughout the whole movie. This is kind of a film about humanity and how prisoners, need a way to express themselves, and art is kind of like the most humane way to express things. And they get to do that in these stage adaptations that they get to do. And it kind of gets them prepared for the real world. And it's actually shown an effect. A lot of prisoners, after they get out of prison, they do things again and they go back. But people in this program, after they get out, they become clean. They don't do any bad things anymore. So this program is really effective for these people. So it's really nice to see that. Coleman Domingo, Clarence Macklin, two of the main performances here, and they just are tremendous and very emotional. They have scenes together, but also on their own that are great. And Clarence Macklin being kind of like the troublemaker of the prison in this movie, but he wants to join the program. And it's really emotional seeing like a big troublemaker, like gang person in here, and he's trying to adjust to people treating him like an actual human being instead of just, a person to be scared of, or a poor person, got to give drugs to, got to give money to. And that's what made it really emotional. And Coleman Domingo's character basically takes him under his wing, shows him the way of this group, shows him he's an actual human being and they care about him, their whole family group of people. This didn't have a big rollout in theaters, which was really sad because it deserves a lot more attention. So when it comes out in digital, I really do recommend it. Number 6 is going to be The Substance, and it was unlike any movie I've ever seen in my life. This was genius filmmaking and storytelling. The themes here about, self-image, beauty standards, especially in Hollywood, were brilliant and fleshed out really nicely with one specific scene of Demi Moore. She's getting ready to go on a date with this person that was a childhood friend, and she never does it. Actually, she never goes out on that date because she is always finding an imperfection in the way about how she looks with her hair or makeup, because she used to work for this company about being a beauty person, and they said that she's too old now, so she doesn't think her body is good enough anymore. So the themes about self-image and the body is really, really well done here. This was my first movie with a lot of body horror. I was really scared going into it, but it made for an insanely awesome theater experience because it's done in a very, very gross way, but also a pretty beautiful way. Its sound design and editing are also really well done. Demi Moore and Margaret Qualley are both, one person, as we said in the movie, and they serve as some of the most commanding performances of the year. And I think they should be up for some awards. Let's just say that they're that good. The whole, use the substance but switch 7 days thing was really interesting to see how it played out, especially when Sue took advantage of it. She really took advantage of it and used a lot. And then you see Elizabeth coming in the bathroom in that one sequence, and she looks absolutely disgusting. She looks like she's like 150 years old, like frail. I was like holding my face. I was like, what's she gonna look like? And she looked extremely hunchback and horrifying. The makeup work done in this movie is Oscar worthy. I think it's going to be either this winning makeup or Nosferatu. Both the makeup work for those movies terrific. And my god, Monstromo Eliza Sue is kind of the most hilarious and horrifying characters of the whole entire year, man. That when that popped up on screen, man, I can remember my first reaction, man. I was like, what the heck is this character? It's the last 20-15 minutes goes to some insane places. I wouldn't say it's a perfect movie because those last 15 minutes might last too long. There's so much blood there, maybe too much blood for me to handle. But I thought that this movie was insanely smart, and I loved how they told the themes. And Demi Moore and Margaret Qualley have some of my favorite performances of the year. Right in the middle, number 5 is going to be Furiosa, which is a true odyssey that has been stuck in my head ever since I first saw it. And it sucks it was a box office disaster, but I did my work because I saw it 4 times in IMAX. I really find it hard to believe that George Miller is 79 years old, still cranking stuff out like this, even though it isn't as good as Fury Road. I do still think it's amazing. And I do wonder if, this being a box office disaster, I wonder if Warner Bros. Would give him another, Mad Max movie. Because I love a Mad Max prequel film set before Fury Road with Tom Hardy. That would be really cool too, because we've seen Mad Max before in the prequels, but not with Tom Hardy playing Max. That would be interesting. That would be like a dream come true. If it's as good as this, it'd be epic. This was, Furiosa's true character journey and story. And it really felt like a novel unraveling in this epic way, as it's like a chapter. It's told in 5 different chapters. It's also a deep revenge story that keeps on the gas pedal, and the action was keeping me locked in. Like, the action sequences were terrific, especially at the bullet farm. The action sequence with all the people paragliding into their ride that they're riding on. I was like, damn, man, it's getting crazy here. Some of the effects were a bit wonky, but I could look past that. Anya Taylor-Joy is one of my favorite actresses working today, and this is definitely her best role yet. She evokes so much emotion, but it's just with her eyes in this one, because she doesn't really have a lot of speaking lines. Her eyes tell you the whole story here, and she really got her moment to shine this one, which I'm so happy for. Chris Hemsworth as Dementus is one of the best movie villains of the year. He kind of felt like he popped right out of a comic book, with him feeling very villainous at once, and then he gets really funny and goofy at another time. And how he looked was crazy. That prosthetic nose that they had on him was kind of funny. It's a brutal revenge tale that I want to keep watching over and over again. And the last 30 minutes, the third act here, was just brilliant stuff. It kept me so locked in. And I think that this makes a nice double feature with Fury Road. Both of these movies are tremendous. Anora comes in at 4 and is another film that proves why Sean Baker is one of the best original storytellers today in Hollywood. It's interesting that all of his movies are about sex workers, but he does it in a way that's very respectful and full of interesting characters that have large emotional journeys. I easily think that this is Sean's best movie. It's really impressive what he does. He doesn't only direct his movies, but he also edits them and writes them on his own. Like, that must take a lot of work for him to do that. And this is a 3-act structure done in such a fine way, with the first act, being really sexy, more focuses on a sex worker aspect. Second act really takes an unexpected funny turn. You're going on this weird adventure, kind of like road trip adventure. Then the third act kind of ends it off in a very heartbreaking way with Annie slash Anora in this way. They each kind of can work on their own as their own short story, which I find really interesting too. Mikey Madison, she might win her first Oscar for her role as Annie here, which would be crazy since this is her first Oscar movie, but she deserved it. She's one of my favorite female actresses this year. She does so much here, man. It's amazing how she went from one of these cameo stars in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Scream 6, and then into this. She is terrific here. And I think just from the last 5 minutes here, she just locks up that Oscar, man. What she is able to say or do kind of with her body and her, kind of how she breaks down in those last 5 minutes is some of the best stuff of the year. Yuri Borisov also surprised me a lot as the best supporting performance here. His performance and, her, Igor and Annie here are a nice two characters that you don't see kind of transforming into allies, but they do throughout the movie. And, Annie's getting pushed around by all these Russian men and getting threatened very harshly. She doesn't know what's going on here. And then, Igor kind of steps in and helps her out, even though he was doing some bad things to her too, but he kind of helps her out in this moment. And both of them, work so well with each other. And that ends up making the ending so moving and impactful. And you can take the ending actually in some interesting ways, kind of in an ambiguous way, but you can tell in an emotional way. It ends very interestingly for these characters, not only for Annie, because I actually don't want to get into spoilers here because I know a lot of people haven't seen it, but for Annie, it ends very emotional because she doesn't know what to do with Igor, because Igor isn't like most men she's met, but it's just ends so heartbreakingly, but also with a beautiful way to, go forward for these characters. In the number 3 spot, it's gonna be Challengers. And, this is where we're getting to, perfect movies from movies I've seen over 5 times this year. And this isn't supposed to be a joke, but it is kind of funny. There's 3 main characters in this movie, and this is at number 3. I don't know how it happened, but it happened. And it's also crazy, but because Luca Guadagnino, man, he had not only this year, but also Queer. And, he's working overtime over there. So good on him. I liked Queer, but it didn't make the list. But, it's Challengers that really struck me very hard. And I think it's his best movie. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Luca, Call Me By Your Name, Bones and All, it's a big favorite for me, very underrated from him. One of my favorite aspects here was definitely the screenplay and its non-linear way of telling its story. That was something I was worried about when I heard about that before going into it my first time. I was like, I don't know if it's going to work. But then I watched it and I was like, wow, that actually provided a lot of insight to these characters, a way to watch it like that. And it was a very smart way to tell it, way to develop our characters. And it also keeps you really locked in because you got to focus on the story more than if a story was just telling it in a linear way. And the reveal of the tennis ball and the racket was handled so much better because it was told in a non-linear way. Had me almost cheering in my theater when that moment happened. The cinematography was also quite masterful. I mean, I've never seen a sport shot so, intensely like this. Football should be done. If someone's making a football movie, they should shoot it like this, because tennis is really cool and, sometimes very boring in real life, but the way tennis is shot here is sort of, enthralling, man. Because, you have so many different POVs. You have the player's POV. You become the ball, where you start going over and under. The camera becomes the ball. I'm not even kidding here. And then you have a POV of under the court. That almost took me out. I was like, under the court stuff was cool. I'd want to watch a tennis match under a court. That's like play on like a plastic court and see through. That'd be actually really cool to watch in real life. But the thing that's perfect about this movie is the score by Reznor and Ross. Oh my God. This type of techno and electro stuff, we haven't seen this good since Tron Legacy, which that's a fantastic score by Daft Punk. And guess what? Reznor and Ross are also doing the next Tron movies. That's very funny. I'm getting hyped for that. But I've listened to the score like 20 plus times. It is very fun score to listen to when you're like doing stuff, walking around, running in the car, any of that. It's amazing. It's also a very sexy and erotic movie without having, any sex or nude sequences, which is really impressive. And that just comes from three outstanding performances from Zendaya, Mike Feist, and Josh O'Connor. They should all be in the awards conversation because they all really understood the assignments of their characters, who were kind of, villainous in a way. Because you have these characters, the two guys here, who are best friends, and then they kind of unravels seeing this one girl, Zendaya's character. And they both want her at the same time, so that makes them butt heads. Zendaya doesn't really want a guy. She just wants to be the best tennis player in the world. And then she gets injured. And then basically she has to, teach one of them, and then they go against each other in the end. And then, in the ending shot, it's like one of them falling into the other one's arms. I'm like, it all just comes around to being lovers, or I guess tennis players, or I guess friends. They could all end up as friends in the end, but it's a tremendous ending, and it's really fun to see these characters kind of try to undermine each other around tennis. Some people call it the most boring sport, but tennis is also very popular, and this just made me love tennis. Coming in the number 2 spot, the runner-up is going to be Nosferatu, which I think is a gothic and horrifying masterpiece by the one and only Robert Eggers, who really hasn't missed. He's a really fun director to watch because he hasn't made a bad movie. He has an insane resume that's filled with The Witch, The Lighthouse, and The Northman, and now Nosferatu. He's lost the in his titles with Nosferatu, and I guess it worked out because this is my favorite film from him. It's funny how he did the, and then he just did Nosferatu, because it would be weird if you called it the Nosferatu. But I would say that this is his most accessible film to date, as it's based on a very famous movie with the same name, Nosferatu, that's about 102 years old now, and it's also based off the extremely well-known text from Bram Stoker. Still, though, this might not be, everyone's favorite movie because it still has that Eggers feel, Eggers pace. I just fell in love with it from the beginning. The opening sequence. I'm a huge Eggers fan. I saw The Witch for the first time in IMAX this year for the re-release. Amazing picture. The Northman, I think that one's great, but I think it's worse. The Lighthouse, also a terrific picture. A lot of great themes there, a lot of great ambiguous stuff going on there. And then you just have some interesting stuff that he goes for. He really makes his movies in such an interesting way, but it all works out in my eyes. Just like Longlegs, I felt like Nosferatu has this sense of dread and death touching you to your core throughout the whole movie. And just like my number 1 movie of this year, which we'll get to, I don't see this leaving my head for a long time. I just keep thinking about it. Writing these notes for this video, I was thinking about it. It is such a movie that will be ingrained in my head for a long time to come. Jared Blaschke deserves a lot of flowers for this one. Robert Eggers, everyone talks about him. He's terrific here directing this. Directs every scene, intensely, perfectly. But it's Jared Blaschke who's a cinematographer. And this might just be the best looking movie of the year for me. He digs deep into the style and the period piece, nature of this, and nails it perfectly. The whites and blacks that are used here with the snow, the shadows. You also have the candlelight playing in the background, kind of like the happiness looming away with the candlelight. But it also has the shadow taking over. It's looming, basically being death, looming over the city, creeping over the whole film. Shadow getting larger and larger, death getting larger and larger throughout the movie. It is terrific. The cinematography, terrific here. Also, the production design, costumes, and beautiful as they went to a real castle in Transylvania, built many other terrific sets, and just like Poor Things, man, these period costumes seem so detailed and so different, and my eyes could never look away from them. There's a lot of scary stuff here, but I can't lie, it also digs into the themes of love really nicely, and it ends very beautifully. The cast was supreme as they all put their best in here, and I've seen this 3 times so far. Each performance gets better and better. Lily Rose Depp does some extremely insane stuff with her body and face in here. All this contortion that she's doing here with her body was all real, and I was freaked the hell out. And 2024 has truly been Nicholas Holt's year, as he's at this, The Order, Jury Number 2, all great films in my eyes, and he gets to have his fun being scared for quite literally the whole film here. Another performance I actually didn't like the first time was Aaron Taylor Johnson, but as I've seen the movie 2 more times now, I kind of enjoyed his performance a lot. He's playing more of the over to the top character, and I think it works because he's playing against people that are taking this seriously, and his character doesn't take it seriously at all. Bill Skarsgård as Count Orlok himself is quite literally incredible, as you can't even believe that it's him. After I got out of the movie the first time, I'm like, is that actually Bill Skarsgård under there? Because there's a lot of makeup work here. As I said, the makeup here is insanely well done. He has this nice stash too. He's pulling it off. And the voice is the only thing where I kind of heard Bill Skarsgård in there. It is, though, insane that it's him. If you didn't say that he's in this movie, I don't think you would even know that it's him. It would have been kind of crazy to see, they didn't give it away who is Kaz as Nosferatu. That would have been kind of funny. They don't give it away. You have to actually wait till the credits to find out who it was. I think they could have worked out with that. But I loved how the marketing team played with never showing him or never hearing his voice. I think that was excellent. I loved seeing him and hearing him for the first time while watching the movie in theaters. Fantastic theatrical experience. And the ending here and the opening of this movie is some of the most captivating, some of my favorite scenes of the year. I just cannot wait to own this movie, to watch it over and over again. It's a terrific feature, and I never would have thought, a horror movie would be my second favorite movie of the year, but here it is. We are now at my favorite movie of the year, and ever since I saw this movie back in February/March, and as I saw early, so that's why it's kind of February, but March for most people, I knew that there's no way anything would unseat this movie, and I was correct, as Dune Part 2 is still my favorite movie, and is my favorite movie still of 2024, and it's actually jumped to my second favorite movie of all time. And this movie actually broke my own record of seeing a movie in theaters, as I saw this one 9 times, and mostly all those were in IMAX. I almost hit number 10, but it left theaters. I saw it 9 whole times, so that's crazy. That's over, what is that, like 21 hours watching Dune Part 2 in theaters? I can't imagine how many times I'll watch Messiah when it comes out, but I don't see anything breaking that record for some time. It only broke Across the Spider-Verse by 1, because I saw Across the Spider-Verse 8 times in theaters, and this 9 times. I thought, true good movies were gone up until this one came out, because this year started out rough, man. I mean, extremely rough. This was my first 5-star movie of the year in March, as we've said. And Christopher Nolan has always been my favorite director, but Denis Villeneuve is getting really, really close to him, because he is doing science fiction so masterfully. I mean, he did Arrival, which I first saw in my film class as a freshman. I thought that movie was fantastic. Blade Runner 2049, which in my eyes is better than the original, and both Dune movies, which everyone said would be impossible to adapt to film, but here he is. Like, Denis Villeneuve, he's literally a science fiction king of today's generation. But without Greg Fraser's cinematography and Hans Zimmer's score, these movies wouldn't be as good as they are. Shots of a desert and sand should not look this good, but they do, and Fraser does such a great job of showing scale here, filming action. Those black and white sequences were, terrific. Black and white is, he did it in a very interesting way here. It looked crazy, man. I was not expecting those sequences to look that good, but they did. You can basically see every little detail in those sequences. Hans Zimmer's score, man, it gets intense, but really beautiful. As my favorite piece of score here was when Paul and Chani were sharing their first kiss on the sand dune. What an intense, score it was. But as we said, scores can be intense, but they can have those somber moments, which I really did love that. And some of my favorite scenes here were the opening, of course, Paul and Fade's duel. Oh, I love that stuff. I was on the edge of my seat during that. The atomics being dropped, Fade's introduction, and, that simply to put, breathtaking ending. It's funny because, I wouldn't think a movie like this would, get to my top 10, get to my number 1 of the year, but I just remember seeing it for the first time at that early screening, my jaw just being on the ground, just silent at the end, because I was like, wow, I just saw what, literally might be a movie that could not come out ever. I never thought a movie like this could ever come out, but here we are. And Timothée Chalamet and Zendaya both have 2 films in my top 10, so good for them here. But they're both terrific, as I said. But it's actually Rebecca Ferguson, Austin Butler, and Javier Bardem who are the best moments here. I think some of the most standout cast members. I'm interested to see where Dune Messiah goes, because I haven't read the book yet, but also heard it goes in a very different direction. Not as much action, mostly focusing on like politics and how Paul is like the main villain here. Really interested to see how Denis adapts that. But Denis, I think he can do it, man. He adapts a hard story, and he does it in a way that makes it have that adequate story. Still adapts it very well, but it also makes it very entertaining. So I have a lot of hope for him. But that's it. That's my top 10 films in 2024, in which I actually saw 202 movies this year. Not as much as last year. Last year, I think I saw like 210 or something like that. But it's still it's still a year filled with good and bad movies. And as I said, leave your own top 10 movies down below in the comments. And that's it for the video. I hope you guys did enjoy this last video of 2024. If you did enjoy, leave a like, subscribe to the channel. See you guys all in 2025. Peace out.